Hey there, my name is Irit and I'm super excited to share with you this simple and easy to make art journal spread that I created using some of my favorite Altenews stamps and of course the watercolors. I am working in my art journal. This specific journal has watercolor paper and that's really my favorite surface to work with when I'm playing with watercolors, and I highly recommend using watercolor paper or any other paper that you know will handle all the water well. But you can use the same techniques that I'm showing here on your scrapbook layouts. I know I have many times, as well as on your cards. So I'm starting with a really fun and easy way to get some color on your background. And basically what I'm doing, I'm using a lot of water and I'm slowly going through my brightest, most vivid colors in the palette and just adding them gradually, letting them blend and letting them drip. You see that my journal is tilted and that really helps the water just flow down. And I also have a little towel there to soak up all the excess water. If you really want that flowy, watery, loose look, you need to add a lot of water and a lot of pigment. So make sure you have something to help you keep your space cleaned. Now, I love bright colors. I love anything that looks like a rainbow. So this is the look I went for here. But obviously you can customize this to any type of look you want. You can do a more seasonal color scheme. In my part of the world, we are now in fall, so that would also look really beautiful with some fall colors, some oranges and deep reds and purples. And this is my safe way of watercoloring floral images. I'm sorry about my head in the frame. It's just a little bit easier to get into all those little areas in the stamp when I get a bit closer to it. So basically what I have here, this is a sheet of watercolor paper and I embossed all of it with that large, gorgeous floral stamp from the Sketchy Floral set. I love that stamp. It is beautiful and that's probably my favorite kind of style to use when I'm doing this type of stamping and coloring. I really love the more sketchy flowers. That's just my personal preference. So on this particular project, I'm using the Sketchy Floral stamp set as well as the Botanical Garden, which I've had for a couple of years now, and I just love that set. So you could do this directly on your background, but I always find it a little bit easier to stamp, emboss, color in, and then fussy cut and decide which flowers to use on which project. It just takes away some of the pressure to get everything perfect because I can just fussy cut and choose the flowers and the areas that I like the most. So this is also a really good opportunity to play with some different color mixes. And if you want your colors to flow into one another, you have to keep things wet. If you let's say you're doing a yellow flower and you want to add some pink to the leaves, if you let the yellow paint dry completely and then add the pink, it won't flow, it won't create that smoother color transition. So you want to dip the new color in while the first layer is still wet, and that will let the colors flow into each other. Another reason I really prefer embossing my stamped images, coloring them, and then fussy cutting them is because when I work on an art journal spread, it's many times it's really hard to get a perfectly stamped image in your art journal, at least with mine. My journals are sometimes bulky. Sometimes I add things in, like I'm going to do in this one, and it's not a completely straight surface. So many times it's just not ideal for stamping. And I find that this way, by, stamping my images on a separate piece of paper, it just saves me the worrying that I won't get a good impression. So I chose to emboss here with white embossing powder. That's my go-to look. I really like that pale, elegant, light and airy look of white embossing powder with watercolors. That's just my personal preference, but of course you could also emboss in any other color. I think gold is gorgeous, very elegant, and yeah, just use your imagination. And of course you can also stamp it with regular ink. I also use a lot of black inks, especially on my scrapbook layouts. I use florals stamped in black, and many times I will just leave it plain, but of course with watercolors it's very, very beautiful, and you can customize it to any color scheme you have going on. So I'm mostly done here with the flowers, and now I'm just adding the leaves, and I'm trying to just vary the colors, mix my own greens sometimes. You can see the variation here in color, that now I'm painting in a more yellow vivid green, and then the other leaves that are already painted are a little bit more into the bluer greens. And I just like to keep it interesting, not have everything with the same color. That's one of the beautiful things with watercolors. You can really play and adjust the colors as you go. You can start with, let's say, a more turquoise color of leaves, and then gradually add more and more yellow or lighter green to that mix, and keep painting. It just gives it a more interesting look, in my opinion, and I really like that variety in colors. And I also like to play with watercolors, so that's always fun. You can see that the palette has a lot of space for mixing colors, and I really find it essential with watercolors to also mix my own. I mean, this set has 36 colors. You really don't have to mix your own, but there is something really fun about it, and you can get really interesting looks when you mix different shades and tweak your colors as you go. I find that part very enjoyable when I'm playing with watercolors. So here you can see another sheet of paper. Again, I stamped a bunch of images. Some are just in black ink, and then some are embossed. On this particular spread, I'm going to use just the embossed ones. I wasn't sure, sometimes you have to audition things and try them and see how they look before you make a final decision. So I always make extras, and I always find a place to use them. If it's not this art journal spread, it'll be the next, or a scrapbook layout. So I always make extras, and that really allows you to play and be creative, try different color schemes, and sometimes it gets messed up, and then sometimes you get really surprised by beautiful results that you didn't expect. Especially with watercolors, there is something, I do love bright colors, I use a lot of bright colors, but there is also something about the muddy colors that you can mix that, I don't know, in watercolors they're just somehow so beautiful, and you always get beautiful surprises when you just play a bit and get creative and get a bit braver. So everything is dry and fussy cut, and now I'm just gluing it to my background. I'm using an acrylic block to hold the flowers in place, making sure they are well glued down. And I mostly did tone on tone look here. So the pink flower is on the pink area in the background, the yellow is on the yellow area, and then some of those violets are on the violet areas. I didn't really make any turquoise or blue flowers in this case, but of course you can. Another step that I think adds a lot is adding a little bit of shadow around the flowers. Now, when I glue mine down, I try not to glue them completely all the way to the edge for two reasons. One, I like the dimension. It casts this shadow that makes things look more dimensional and interesting than if you just glue it completely flush down to your background. And the other one is that it lets me add more easily those shadows that I'm adding now, because I can get with my brush just underneath the flower edges and I don't have to worry that I'll get all those gray colors onto my stamped image. So I just add usually some darker colors, some more grayish colors. Shadows are not necessarily gray, but they are usually darker and more muted colors. I mean, you won't see like a, opera pink shadow, at least I haven't seen yet. So you want to make sure that you get some darker, deeper, more muted, more neutral colors. And it just makes it look more real, more dimensional, as opposed to just, you glued a flower on a background. So I think it adds a lot, and I try to add it to most of the pages that I create in this style. This is also a good opportunity to add some more splatters and drips if you think it is needed. I always think it's needed, so that's my final step, adding some more splatters. It also helps things come together and also adds to that messy, splattery look. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you feel inspired to try something similar. Make sure you check out the blog post with all the images and all the details. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you a wonderful creative day. Bye bye.